Hello, my friends. I think over the years, people may think that I'm quite a serious guy, and I am. But I'm also one of those playful people. And what's taken me a long time to learn is how to speak playfully about the most profound things. So today, I want to speak to you about something so basic, so fundamental. And I'm going to be as playful as I can be. I've been cross-translating, that is, using words and symbols as precisely as I could. And I had to learn gradually over time now, 45 years, to refine the consistent use of any metaphor, any symbol, and all the words, so that I could translate from a state in which my structure, as Richard Moss, my assemblage point as the separate self, Richard Moss, was simply dissolved. At the time, it was a kind of shattering experience. Now it's just fun to play. How I awoke, what it was, maybe one day I'll make a video just about that. And there's certainly pieces of that in my books, like the first book, The Eye That Is We, and the book, The Black Butterfly. All these 45 years to try to point in the most effective way that I could understand what it means when you stop the most fundamental mistake of all, when you wake up out of it, that you are not an object. You are not a separate self. You are the subject, capital S. You are awareness. And your awareness, you wake up out of the dream of being a separate self, an object, and you become the assemblage point of your identity. Your beingness is no longer a thing or a place. It is awareness, consciousness. And then you can see, as if far, far away, how you believed for however long. At that point, I was 30 years old. I probably started to believe in myself as a separate self, but age 8 or 9, like almost all human beings do. So in teaching about this fundamental mistake of predicating your sense of being and identity on yourself as if you were an object. These are my feelings. This is what I don't want. This is what I do want. How could all those people be like that? They should be like this, and me. And I'm sad. I'm not good enough. I'm best. I'm better than the others. I knew. And you don't even necessarily think that you know. In your grandiosity, you just defend and defend and defend and defend through your success, maybe your wealth, and many, 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 many other structures. Yippee. And therefore we have dominance and craziness and war. All the suffering starts with that mistake. I've often had to talk in this process of translating, cross-translating, to try to understand how we get to the dream of yourself as a separate self. This is the dream people are living in now, probably the large part of the dream of where you are in yourself as you listen to me. This is probably 99.999% of the 8 now billion people on planet Earth. If you dream that you are a separate self, if you believe you are an object and not the subject to consciousness, not the awareness of your thinking, you have thoughts and you're the awareness of your thoughts. You have feelings and you're the awareness of your feelings. You have emotions and you really think that I'm angry and I'm resentful and I'm bitter and I'm never going to be like you. I mean, I. That's that's the sect that controls the world. The sect of me. And in Europe, I always, in the French, with the French audience, I say, the sect of moi. People have said that what I teach, that I'm a sect, at least the Europeans and the French. It's silly. It's silly. Nobody that wakes up is a religion. Nobody that wakes up is a sect. It can't be. You can't be, that. A baby doesn't have a separate self. Children are playing, they imagine things. They're part of the fantastic world of their imaginary journeys. They're in and out. But about 8 or 9, they're getting crushed. They've developed long before 8 or 9 subject-object consciousness. The baby's looking, watching, looking, facial recognition, watching mother, and finally, there's mother. Now, mother has an object. At first, you don't even know that mother has an object. Maybe it's shiny, so you look at it for a second. Then she hides it, and you know it's there, and you want it. My wife, Kathy's 1 year and 1 or 2 week old granddaughter, now, today, Kathy FaceTimed me, and I had my phone, and as soon as the baby was looking at me, I just do the game I play with it all the time. I start whistling. And it goes, and this time it tried to point behind the screen Kathy was using, as it has been doing now for a little while. For example, when Kathy's here and her mom FaceTimes, and the baby at first was, but now it thinks somehow she's in that. So you see, the baby's beginning to get some sense of an object. And as it does, it will start to have a sense of itself as a subject. It will build subject-object consciousness. And it'll begin to think of itself in time. It will remember things. It will remember where it left something, and it'll go and get it. And eventually, as I show very clearly in my book, The Mandala of Being, you create this thing I call a mandala of being. The present moment is the beginningless-endless now. It's the experiential consciousness. It is pure love. It is consciousness without an object. It is source. It is whatever you want. And that's my religion. My religion is beginningless-endless love. That is what I bind myself back to. That is because, not because I'm religious in that way. I bind myself back to it because it is me. It is what awakened. I know it. I am it. So the baby gets to a certain age, and at 8 or 9 years old, it's a very difficult time for children, because now they start to do something. They enter into the fundamental mistake. They start predicating their actual beingness and identity on themselves as if they were an object, not just what the baby was at the beginning. An undifferentiated awareness that slowly differentiates into me, you, past, future consciousness. Now, me is at the center of their existence. They have thoughts about themselves and others in the past. It's only them and others in the future. They have all these judgments about people, everyone else, politics, this, that. People live their whole lives in this structure of me as an object, as a thing, as a separate self. And all suffering starts there, whether it's within yourself or between you and others, or between countries, or between politicians and parties. It's actually laughable if you're awake. And yet the craziness could cause the death of me and people I love. It's not laughable in that sense. It can cause misery. The craziness is eating the planet alive. The craziness is making some people control billions of dollars and some people hardly able to feed themselves. But it all starts with a separate self. And then all the laws and rules and concepts. Oh, let's organize separate selves into socially conscious socialist countries. Let's organize them in communist communist country. Let's organize them in demos, people, leadership, democracy. And let's give the movement of wealth to capitalism. And okay. Now, if you wake up, you have to do all those things, but you don't do them in the same way. You don't do them in the same spirit. You cannot really want to make someone else's life miserable so yours is safer. When Kathy and I, for all these 45 years, have done this work, I'm cross-translating, but I also know it can't be done just with words. So how else does it have to be done? You have consciousness to wake up conscious. Things have to be experienced, not just from different perspectives, like this teacher says it this way, this teacher says it that way, this tradition this way. That's useful if you give yourself over to all of them and try to find what's at the core. What's at the core is consciousness. Consciousness. It's an experiencing consciousness. It's how you are, your feelings, and you are always more. It's how you are, your thinking, and you are always more. So what I do, is not only change the points of view from the kind of conceptual framework, but also essentially to teach the body, to teach the feeling nature, to shift balance, to throw us into, and gradually as you come back into balance, I liken it to this. I'm transmitting that consciousness. It's like a magnetic field that doesn't begin and doesn't end. You have within you the part of yourself that is that consciousness, or you can't awaken to it, nor could I. Which is why geese and ducks and foxes and birds don't awaken to it. They don't have that particular potential within their consciousness. But geese don't think, I am Joe who's better than Jim, and onward and onward and onward. They play by the rules of nature, by the natural order. I'm saying geese because I like to watch them. We have had 10 goslings with 2 families, now it's 9. But that's the way of nature. Boy, imagine if something happened to us and 10% of our babies now died, as they used to. If COVID killed 10% of us. But in nature, that's what happens. Let's hope it stays at 9. Because I care about them, because it's fun to watch, because it's beautiful. It's a joy to see how just that one example right in front of my eyes of nature at play. So what we do is we get your spark in you, your magnets to start to vibrate, get a little bit freer, and line up with the transmission of the deeper consciousness, with the reality of the deeper consciousness that I am literally living and transmitting. It never begins or stops with me, even if I'm asleep. That's a conjecture, because I don't know. I just know that people meet me in their dreams and I'm not doing anything. And they've never heard of me. And then they go finding me. So how that works is a total mystery to me. And I'm not building any identity on it. But what I'm interested in is, and why the collective group field is so important, is that if some of you start to vibrate with us a little more, then you start to add to the collective energy, the collective intelligence, the field energy. And then everyone the magnets align. Now, there's a genius also in what we do, because when you go to a meditation retreat, you basically sit and you listen to someone talk. If you go to a dance movement consciousness process, that can be wonderful. Lucy, who is our interpreter for our retreats in Europe, between English and French, she's a magnificent movement teacher. And she works from the consciousness that she's absorbed from me, from when she was first a student in her 20s till now. And so all these years I've been using music for people to dance, using music very loud in the early years for people to listen to, using breathing exercises, taking advantage of things like the dervish whirling, using Buddhist exercises, using, and then all the magnets in the room are lining up, lining up, lining up. And in that lining up, you know who you really are. And so your fight with yourself stops. Your fight with the world stops. Suddenly there's forgiveness. Suddenly there's trust. Suddenly you can laugh, have some humility about yourself. Suddenly you have a lot more compassion for how other people get lost, how other people have the false predication that they're a separate self and operate from that suffering and inflicting suffering and inflicting suffering. Now, what we know is that only in the rarest of moments does someone shift in a way in which the new consciousness will stay permanently. It's so rare. In my work, it's rare. In all work, it's rare. I wasn't part of any work when it happened. It's part of what can happen. It's the evolving consciousness potential in this universe with life here, at least on planet Earth. It's probably true everywhere. That's a fun speculation, but not for now. So the important thing is that the very ways we do the work there is the way you can develop and design the practice that allows you to keep turning your gaze back, moving from the false predication of you as a separate self, moving into consciousness of your feelings and journeying with them in more and more unconditional, non-conditional ways. Seeing your thoughts and realizing this thought is making me angry. This thought is making me anxious. This thought is, and just relaxing. It's like you wake yourself out of a dream again and again and again and again and again. And the dream of your separate self finally will begin to. So that kind of awakening is gradual, and everybody has to do the work. But when we will accelerate it for you, you'll get a methodology that's so much broader than just sitting meditation or mindfulness practice, or it will be broader than what you learn from the Sufi teacher within the Sufi tradition or the Buddhist teacher within the Buddhist tradition, even though all of those have the power of awakening come from that core process. Some emphasize heart more than others. Some emphasize intellect more than others, the mind more than others. Some emphasize the body in hatha type yoga, for example, more than others. But the simple point is you have to design your practice that fits you. And the way that I teach leaves so much room for that. So much room for you to align yourself and say, that doesn't fit for me. That fits for me. That doesn't, and then you have a way of living this. And the people who have let my life touch their lives for long enough are now touching other people's lives. They're aligning that magnet in other people's lives and bringing them less and less in the dream of the separate self. And like me, they're discovering, what's the language for this? How do you cross-translate? Here's Richard's language. Here's Franklin Merrill Wolf's language. Here's Buddha's language. Here's Rinpoche here's language. Here's church mystics their language. Here's Sufi master here. Here's Rumi's language. Here's Walt Whitman's language. But you have to find your own. Informed by all of those. Oh, this is fun. You have no idea how much fun it is. And your ego is probably quaking. Oh my God, oh my. So lead it there. Just lead the false predication there. Just lead it there. And have fun.